Alright, hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of the custom charge cable build. We're going to finish off the second part of this cable. Between the last video and this video I went ahead and got the shrink wrap up on the USB connector side of the cable here. So this part of the cable is for all intents and purposes complete. We've got this side, which is where the replaceable connector end is going to go, and it's nice and rigid and well constructed here at the splice point between the connector and the wires in the microphone cable here. I think, as a note to myself, for the next generation of this cable, I will probably try to see if I can source these connectors without wires on them and just take the wires from the microphone directly into the connector, and it'll be a much easier build from that side. But now what we need to do is we need to take this and attach it to this. Now, I'm actually probably... I'm kind of undecided at the moment as to whether or not I want to put the heat shrink on this entire thing or just leave these wires open like this. If I leave them like this, they probably won't be as resilient as they would be if I heat shrunk them, but if I heat shrink them, they aren't going to be particularly flexible. So I think for the first iteration of this, because I have several of these and these are nice and cheap, I think I'm going to leave the wires for the most part bare. I'm going to take a little section of this and put it at the base here as a strain relief, and then I'll also take a section of this and put it on this end of this for strain relief on that, because I'm not actually going to be using the plastic housing for this, because I want it to be reasonably flexible right up to the base of the connector here. So the next phase here is going to be a little bit interesting. You'll remember last time we left these numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to connect this. So then this is going to come in and clip in like that, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 across that. Now this is where things get weird because of the numbering of the pins on the jack here. So you'll notice, I'm not too sure how well it'll show on camera, hopefully it'll show fairly well. You'll notice here that there are 3 little solder pads on that side and 2 little solder pads on that side. So according to what I found on the internet, when you're... Actually, I'm just going to break that off and flip it over. There we go. When you're looking at this like this, and you've got the connector here, and it comes down a little bit like this, and you've got 1, 2, 3 conductors. On that side, that's conductor 5, 3, and 1. And then when you flip it over, and you're looking at those 2 connectors, we'll just draw a quick rectangle here, and the little end of it there. You've got those 2 conductors. Those are number 2 and number 4. Now, these pins, you'll notice that this has 5 pins, whereas a USB connector has 4. And this is important for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's if you have a USB OTG cable, which is the cable or connector that you use to plug a USB device into the bottom of your phone or any sort of Android device that supports USB OTG. And in that case, you'll use one of the pins to basically tell the phone, this is an OTG adapter, not a power cable. So the numbering is still the same for the most part. You have 1 is your VCC, which is plus 5 volts. Then you have 2 is your data plus pin. 3 is your data minus pin. 4 is normally not connected. And then 5 is ground. So the 4 pin, if you short that to ground with a small resistor, that indicates to your phone that you have connected a USB OTG cable to it. And that's how it knows when you have a USB OTG cable and that you can connect, and that it needs to actually provide power to that port rather than try to take power from that port. So we're going to get started here. I'm going to turn my soldering iron on, and it's going to be a little challenging pre-tinning these pads. We'll have to do the best we can. Let's see, so we don't actually need number 4, so I'm just going to dab a little bit of flux onto pin 2 here, and then dab a little bit of flux onto the other pins. Not too much, because I don't want to make it super sticky, but we'll have to have enough to make it work. Let's put the notepad off to the side here. And then we're going to just get started here by carefully daubing some solder onto these pads. Now I'm noticing this plastic is melting very quickly, so I'm going to turn my soldering iron back down to 300. I had turned it up to 400 during the last video because I was struggling with the solder a little bit, but this might be a little too warm for this connector. Okay, I'm going to try to get a little bit more solder onto these pads. Oh, I do not like this at all. That's just melting the plastic. That's not really very encouraging. Okay, so now we're just going to come over here and we're going to quickly strip a very small amount of insulation off of these wires. Because we don't have a lot of room to work with on the connector itself. So we're going to have to be really careful about not having any excess wire. This is going to be a very challenging connector to attach. So we'll have to hope it works. Otherwise this will be a very expensive learning experience to not being able to do it. Well, no, it won't be an expensive learning experience. I'll just go buy another connector and try again with different techniques and go with whatever one works. Okay, so we're going to quickly daub a little bit of flux onto these wires. Here. And then tin them. One at a time. Oh, here's my multimeter turning off because I was reconfirming everything was properly pinned out before I started the video. And it complains if you don't turn it off. So there's a little bit of flux in there from trimming off the shield on the main wire. So we'll just quickly tin these up. I'm going to turn this off so it stops beeping. Ah! Come back here, you. which one was that? That was, I need to do the gray one. Okay. Alright. Just a little dab of solder on that one. Okay. So now the challenge is going to be soldering the wires onto this little tiny connector. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my vise here to very carefully clamp down on, very gently clamp down on the connector there to give me a little bit more freedom. Now, we're going to start this process by taking a small chunk of the heat shrink tubing here, and we're going to go ahead and slide that over top of this, like so. I haven't had any feedback on the last video yet as to whether or not this is too loud for videos, but we're just going to shrink this up real quick. I'm going to move that up just a little bit more. I don't want to interfere with the action of that lock, but I also want to make sure that it's acting in the capacity as a strain relief, which is what I'm hoping it will. Actually, I'm going to do this even... I'm going to over-engineer this even a little bit more. So I'm going to take a small chunk of this first. So I like to over-engineer things, sue me. So we're going to take that, and we'll put that like that. So that's going to serve the purpose of gathering the 4 wires here into a nice, neat little bundle. So it'll be holding them kind of in a cylinder sort of shape. And then once that's cooled, that's good enough. We'll slide this on. And over top here, we want to put it just a little bit over that. We don't want it to keep us from being able to actuate that locking snap there, but I want to make sure that it acts as a strain relief. I'm going to shrink this down here. Like so. Whoops. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, so we're just going to drop that in there. And quickly. Oh, it's slipping off. That's not good. Oh, bugger. Oh well. I may try to redo that at a later date, but it'll be good enough for now. Anyway, so that's done. And now I'm going to take one more chunk of the smaller tubing, maybe about that much there, and we're going to slide it over here ahead of time, just to keep it out of the way, and because if we don't put it on ahead of time, we won't be able to put it on later. So we know that the red wire is pin 1. So we're going to grab the red wire here. And what did we decide pin 1 is? When looking at it like this one is pin 1. one with the gigantic blob of solder, and I need to trim this up a little bit. It's a little bit too long, so we got to trim a tiny bit of that off, and then I'm just gonna. This is very stressful. There we go. So there's that. I've forgotten what the next color wire is. Thankfully, I have additional connectors here to tell me which one is which. Okay, so the white one is next. So the white needs to be soldered onto pin 2. Now, pin 2, that's the only one on the other side here that has solder on it. So we're just going to bring this around, like so. Schmutz on my soldering iron tip there. There we go. I'll just quickly. Oops. Oh, that didn't work. Did that actually flow on? Not overly thrilled with that flow, but I think I'm kind of stretching the limits of what I can do here. Alright, and the next one is the black wire. So we're going to solder that one on next. Very carefully. It's a little bit long, so we'll trim a little nip of it off there. Flow that on. There we go. That's a good solid connection. And then the last wire, which I already know is going to be too long, so we're just going to nip a little bit of it off. And then flow it on. There we go. Okay. Now, before I get ahead of myself and I didn't squeeze that too hard, doesn't look like it. Okay. Now we'll put this back on the floor. Off. Now, we're just going to go ahead and test this. Now I'm not going to be testing it with a phone, because that would be dumb. We're going to test it with a cheap rechargeable battery. Okay, we'll just plug into this over here for a second here. So, as I lay my hand on my soldering iron. Okay, that plugs into the USB port nice and smooth, so that's good. And we're going to grab this USB battery here, and we're going to plug it in and hope that smoke and flames don't come out of it. This is a little exciting because this is a bare board and it could be really exciting. Let's see. And that is an indication that I have successfully built myself a charge cable. So I'm just going to unplug this very carefully. There we go. And we're going to unplug it from over here, like so. And then I'm going to unplug this for a moment. We're just going to draw this up and over, right over top of the whole thing here. It's a bit of a tight fit, but I'm going to make it work. You know what? I'm going to modify this just a little bit. We're going to trim off some sharp edges here that are preventing the heat shrink from going over top of it very smoothly. They're probably not little plastic bits that are designed to hold it into its plastic housing there, but being as we're not using that, we don't actually need those little nubbins, and in fact they're just getting in the way. So instead, we're going to use this, and I'm going to bring it right up to the edge of, right up to the edge of the connector here. Oh boy, this is really tight fit. Get on there. Cooperate. There's that side. There's that side. Actually, I'm going to push it just a little bit further on. I actually want to overlap just a tiny bit because of the way the heat shrink retracts when you heat it up. Okay, now I'm going to grab my heat gun again here. Alrighty. Just gonna roll it a little bit here. This works the glue in between the wires and works them into more cylindrical shape. Works the glue into the connections so that everything's nice and sealed off. There we go. So there we have it. That's the concept of my replaceable USB charge cable there. If this connector ever goes bad, I can just nip it off and install a new one, or even repair it. And of course it's got an easy disconnect, so I can actually switch this cable out and use it to charge other devices. I can just build a new header for it. So now that I've done the heat shrink part of it, we're gonna plug it back in over here. And what did I do with that battery? There it is. We'll plug it back into the battery. It's much stiffer now, so it's actually like I'm plugging in a cable. And there we go. It starts to charge right away. So the only other test would be to plug it into my phone. Here's where we really hope that smoke and flames don't come out, and we're just going to plug it in and it starts to charge. So, you know, this is really low profile here, so it shouldn't run into too many problems with, you know, being flexed or bent. It's got a nice floppy section here, so, you know, there's a lot of flexibility there for strain relief and, well, not having it stress because it's nice and a loose cable. And of course, then the entire cable itself is also nice and super floppy. So there we have it. I have completely built a USB charge cable from scratch. Now I'm just going to hit pause here real quick, and I'm going to run over to my computer and see if it actually works as a data cable as well. So I will be right back. Okay, so I ran over to my computer and plugged it in, and it doesn't seem like it's working quite properly as a data cable. I don't know if that's because it's not talking to my phone seems to think it's plugged in to a data cable because it asks me if I want to activate media transfer protocol or just charge over USB in the way that it does. But my computer was not acknowledging it, so I may have not correctly set the data pins up properly, so that will require some investigation on my part, and maybe I'll just have to build a new connector. So we'll see what happens there. But in the meanwhile, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, give me a comment in the comments below, or hit like, or subscribe, or share it with your friends. Do that thing you like to do when you like videos. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.